Raindrops? Welcome to Sunday's episode of Reality with the King. So look, I'm trying something different. You know I love my raindrops, and you all know how spiritual I am. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I do something every Sunday called Happy Sunday. It's like a minute or two of me preaching to the choir. In this case, preaching to the raindrops. So I wanted to do something a little bit bigger, and that is every Sunday giving you guys what I like to call Soulful Sundays with the raindrops. So welcome to today's first episode of Soulful Sundays. So like I said, as you all know, I'm very spiritual. God is the leader of my life, the leader of my household, and I like to spread the word when it comes to things that we all may be experiencing. Sometimes when I do my Happy Sunday post, it's not always about me. It could be about situations I've learned from my friends or just things I'm feeling in the spirit. So for today's episode, I am going to talk about the fact that you have to go big or go home. Step out on faith, people. That's the biggest thing that you can do. Step out on faith. You all know me as the king of reality television, but I feel like a lot of you guys don't know a lot about my background, and that's no one's fault but my own because I don't talk about myself too much. But for Soulful Sundays, I am going to start sharing a little bit more about me, about my background, about my history, in addition to how God is the sole reason why I'm at this place in my life. So, as we talk about go big or go home, in addition to making sure that you stay in faith, I am a young gay black boy from Detroit, Michigan. And I knew at 12 years old that I wanted to have a life in the entertainment industry. The moment I saw Ananda Lewis host Teen Summit, I was like, that is what I want to do. I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea how that was going to happen. I'm in Detroit, child, and I'm 12, okay? And Teen Summit came on every Saturday afternoon at 12 o'clock noon, and I would wake up just in time because I like to sleep late on the weekends. I still do that at my big age. So I was like, at 12 o'clock, I got to watch Ananda Lewis, and I was so impressed by her. Beautiful, articulate, super smart. She's a journalist. Hey, Portia. So seeing her, I was like, this is what I want to do. But my surroundings did not match my dreams. So I knew instantly that my faith in God had to match my dreams because the surroundings of my world did not. And at 12 years old, I said, I don't know what this means, God, but I know that my life is bigger than just staying, thriving, living, and dying in Detroit, Michigan. I knew that. I knew that instantly. So at 12 years old, I made the decision to just study the greats. I studied Oprah Winfrey. I studied Barbara Walters. I studied Diane Sawyer. I would watch Montel Williams' talk show. I would just watch all of these people, and I thought to myself, one day I am going to do just that. That's all I knew. And the moment I also saw TRL and 106 in Park. So at this point, I'm like 18, I believe. And I was fascinated with New York City. Fascinated by it, like super fascinated by it. Because if you remember TRL, again, I'm showing my age. But if you remember TRL and 106 in Park, but especially TRL, you would see outside all of the audience members and the fans in Times Square looking up to the studio where Carson Daly would interview some of our favorite musicians, from Destiny's Child to Britney Spears to NSYNC. And I was just fascinated by the world of New York City. So I said, okay, maybe I'm meant to live in New York City. Maybe that's what I'm meant to do. Okay. So at 12 years old, saw Ananda Lewis. From 12 to 18, I'm studying Oprah Winfrey, Barbara Walters, and Diane Sawyer especially. And at 18, 19, I'm like, I need to be in New York City. Again, I'm in Detroit. I'm in school. I'm at Wayne State University, a city college, because I was still living at home. I took a gap year because when I graduated high school at 17 years old in 1997, I was like, child, I don't know who I am or what I want to do. So I took a gap year, and instead of going to college, I decided to intern at a gospel radio station. You see how God is just in the picture at all times? So I interned for free at a gospel radio station in Detroit, Michigan. And my job was to not only like run the errands, like get coffee and, all that stuff, which I didn't mind doing. Like, who am I at 17 years old having some sort of like problem with running errands? I was like, no, I'm going to hustle and I'm going to make something work. Still don't know what that is, but I'm going to make something work. In addition to running errands, I was also working with the on-air personality. And as a journalist, I was like, okay, I am going to help him write the news copy that he would read on air. So I would do my research about what was happening in the local town of Detroit. I would write it for him. He would read my copy on the air, and I would help select gospel songs. This is a true story. So I did that for a while, went to college. Around that time, Oprah Winfrey had this particular segment or her talk show called Live Your Best Life, and it just spoke to me. And I was like, I have to leave Detroit.
I gotta go.
I got to get up on out of here. So at 22 years old, my sister and I, along with her best friend, we all said we're going to leave Detroit. And if you ever known anybody who lives in Detroit or are from Detroit, honey, you don't leave. You don't leave. And I was like, for me, again, this is for me. I knew that my life was bigger than just working at the big three. And the big three in Detroit are the plants, right? It's Ford, GM, and Chrysler. So General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, because Detroit is the motor city. So if you are a black guy in Detroit, Michigan, and you work for Ford, General Motors, or Chrysler, you made it. It's a good job, good benefits. You make a cute coin. You get to buy some Cartier glasses, a fur coat, and some snakeskin boots, child. You were living life. And everybody wanted that life.
Except me. I just, can you imagine Carlos King at a plant putting up fiberglass? Nailing something inside of a car, getting a screwdriver, a tool belt. Okay.
I thought so. So I was like, this ain't for me. So we left Detroit, Michigan. I had $500 in my pocket. And I said, God, as long as you are with me, I'm going to be okay. My father cried and was like, you're leaving? I said, I'm getting out of here. And he said to me, you can always come back. And little did he know that when he said that, I said to myself, baby, I'm never coming back. I'm not coming back here. Nothing's wrong with here. Home is home. God put something in me at 12, and I gotta figure this out. I gotta figure this out. And I gotta see it through. So that was me. I was like, I'm gonna see it through. So left Detroit, $500 in my pocket. It's me, my sister, her best friend at the time. We moved to New York City. My sister and her best friend found this apartment in Harlem before we left, of course. And at that time, the rent was $1,500 a month, which is a steal. This is back in like 2002. So the money I left Detroit with was my portion of the rent for the following month. And I was like, I got to find a job. So my sister, her best friend, and I, the moment we got to New York City, we spent hours every day walking because we could not afford to ride the subway train. We would walk, okay, from 148th and Broadway to 34th Street to look for a job. God is good. So within 5 days, I got a job at the Gap, okay, on 34th Street. Unfortunately, it's no longer there. But 34th and Herald Square, I got a job at the Gap. And I was like, who gets a job within 5 days of moving to New York City? And I said, okay, God, you got me. You got me. You got me. So I got the job, okay? And I was like, okay, Carlos, you didn't move to New York City to just work. You moved here to be in the business. So I dropped out of Wayne State University, and instead of me being an out-of-town resident and paying extra in tuition, I said, once again, I'm going to take a year off to be a resident so that when I go to college in New York City, I can pay the local resident tuition, which is much cheaper. However, I got to work, pay my bills, but I also got to figure out how to get in the industry. So long story short, me and my sister and her best friend, I was like, I want an internship at Def Jam. I don't know why. I was like, am I meant to be in the music industry? I did intern at the gospel radio station. Def Jam ain't gospel, but baby. Def Jam ain't gospel, child, but at that time in the early 2000s, you had Jay-Z, Rockefeller Records. You had Ja Rule, Irv Gotti, rest in peace, Murder Inc. Like, the place to be in the music industry was at Def Jam. So I walked into Def Jam offices, and the security guard at the front desk said, may I help you? I lied. I lied and said,
Well, I have a meeting with the Internship Coordinator.
And he said, your name ain't on the list. I said,
no, it is. I have a meeting, and I said the guy's name because I did my research, because I'm a journalist.
He looked at me.
I looked at him.
He looked at me.
I looked at him.
And he said, all right, here's your pass. Go upstairs. I'm like, not me sneaking into Def Jam, child. So I go up the escalator, and I am escorted to the internship coordinator's office. And it was this white guy whose department really focused on rock music. Now, I don't know anything about Led Zeppelin, child, or Guns N' Roses. Nothing about it. But I'm an intern somewhere, baby, in this building. So he said, so I knock on his door. And he said, yes. I said, hi, I'm Carlos King, and I want an internship. He said, how'd you get up here? I said, security let me in. He said, you snuck up in here? I said, yeah. He looked at me.
I looked at him.
He looked at me.
I looked at him. I looked at him.
He looked at me. And he's like, I'm impressed. You snuck your way into Def Jam office. So look, my department focused on rock music. Looking at you, I can tell you're not into rock music, child. So what type of music are you into? And I said, Rockefeller and Murder Inc. So he took me down to that particular department, introduced me to the executives over there, and said, look, this is Carlos King. He wants an internship. I vouched for him. And I'm like, this man vouched for me. He never met me before until today. And that's how I got the internship at Def Jam, working with the department. And again, it was always me stepping out on faith. It was me dreaming big. It was the fact that my surroundings did not reflect this dream I had, but I was focused on making it work. And that's exactly what I did. I made it work. And then fast forward to me just being the king of internships. I interned at The View with Barbara Walters, Meredith Vieira, Star Jones, and Joy Behar. I'm an intern. Then I interned at BET. And I'm interning at 106 and Park, the show that at 18 years old I would watch that inspired me, along with TRL, to move to New York City. So once again, when God sees you doing the work, he makes it easier for you to achieve your blessings. You can think about it all you want to. You can talk about it all you want to. You got to move your feet. You got to move your feet. And once God sees that, he makes the road less traveled. He makes the journey a tiny bit easier for you, because faith without works is dead. So when I interned at 106 and Park, working with Free and AJ, being inspired by all of these amazingly talented Black people that were super young and super smart, and I'm just like, this is everything to me. I was so inspired by seeing smart men and women who look like me running shit. Excuse me. This is Soulful Sundays, child, not Monday Night Live. Okay, so I'm just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I work there. Fast forward, I get the opportunity to work on a show called The Real Housewives of Atlanta. I'm in New York City. I'm thinking I'm doing big things. I have a studio apartment in Brooklyn because I had to leave my sister, her best friend child. I said, look, I got to be alone. I'm a Libra. I got to figure some things out. And I'm also checking for dudes. It's the whole thing. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole other podcast episode, child. I'm like, I could be having 2 female roommates. I got to start dating. Okay, so got my studio apartment. I'm making money. I'm in New York City. You know, I thought I was doing big things. So I got this call about this opportunity as an associate producer on Housewives. And I was like, I don't know. I'm in New York City. Because, you know, when you live in New York City, you think you big time. So I was told, well, you have to live in Atlanta to have this job. And we're not paying you as much as you're making at BET. So once again, the faith had to come in. I'm like, I had to take a pay decrease, live in Atlanta as a local, which means find my own place. So the African at the the African comes back, child. So the African that I was dating lived in Atlanta, and he was like, clearly you staying with me, and you don't have to like help me with my rent. So I stayed with him, but I had to rent a car. So long story short, I said, you know what, God, you always held my hand. I'm going to figure this out. And I figured it out. I sublet my apartment, and I decided to go to Atlanta on a whim and see if this reality show called The Real Housewives of Atlanta was going to be something.
Okay. Whatever that means.
I made no money. I made money, but my money had to go to paying for my rental car. Although I sublet my apartment, I did not sublet it at the rate in which my rent was. So I had to add money to that. And I had to like fend for myself. I made no money. But I said to myself, the opportunity will be bigger than the money you're making at the time. Because I always believe money will always come when you follow your passion. And although you may hit a wall, God's going to bless you. Because once again, he's testing your faith. You claim you want to be this big time, whatever at the time I wanted to be. So let's see. Let's talk about this sacrifice. Let's talk about this sacrifice. So I sacrificed financially, emotionally, professionally. And the rest is history as it relates to the best decision that I made in my life at that time in terms of doing that show. And then it hit me, wait, I love reality TV. This is it. I love this. I get to work with real people, tell their authentic stories, dig deep as a journalist, and really figure out like how to tell their story in the most authentic way. So I applied that in terms of my producing skills. And that's why, as the king of reality television, the way I produce shows are different because I dig deep. I'm like, but why did you do that? Why do you feel that way? How did that happen? I study people, and I implore them to go deeper. Like, okay, you feel that way, but let's go deeper in terms of why. Where did that come from? Explain that to me, and then explain it to the audience. So that's what I was doing. And obviously, doing that show was one of the biggest blessings in my life because it afforded me the opportunity to grow in that business, grow in reality television, and be a part of one of the most amazing franchises in reality TV history. And then once again, I'm living life, I'm making money. I'm like, okay, God, the fruits of my labor. I sacrificed living in New York City and Atlanta simultaneously, but the rewards are there. And I moved to Atlanta. I left New York City behind because I wanted to give that show my full-time attention. And then another thing happened spiritually, and I was like, I want to start my own production company. Once again, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I got to do this. And then I just did it. I said, I want my company to represent me, but most importantly, represent my faith. Because all my blessings come from God. And what better way to honor God than by doing a word play on my name and my devotion to him. So my last name is King, as you all know. And I said, what if I call it Kingdom? Like, playing my last name, but also honoring God. So instead of calling my company Carlos King Productions, child, I said, I'm going to call it Kingdom. But then I'm like, it can't be called Kingdom Productions because that doesn't sound like, you know, interesting, I guess. So I'm like reading the Bible and I'm trying to like figure out words to play along with it. And then I saw the word reign, R-E-I-G-N. And I said,
Kingdom reign. God's kingdom will always reign in my life.
that's the name of my production company. It'll be called Kingdom Reign. I'm going to honor God with my production company because he took my mustard seed at 12 and ballooned it into this person and this professional that I was becoming as I wanted to build this empire. So I said, I am going to call my production company Kingdom Reign Entertainment. And that's what I did. And that meant, if you're going to do this, baby, do it big. And that meant, once again, I had to sacrifice something. And what I sacrificed was my time on Atlanta Housewives. I had to leave the show. I'm like, I have a few shows under my belt. Under Kingdom Reign, we got Hollywood Divas, The Next 15, Selling in the ATL. We did Reginae, Super Sweet 16. I'm like, this is it. So I had to leave Atlanta and move to Los Angeles. And I had to leave a big paycheck behind. But I did that because I said, God has shown me time and time again that as long as I step out on faith, I'm going to be okay. And even if the sacrifice feels tough, I'm going to be okay. He has proven that to me. And one thing I always say to myself when things get tough, I'm like, God has never let you down. So why would he begin? So I left the show and I moved to Los Angeles. And I said, I'm going to start my production company. And my accountant called me after a few months of living in LA. And he said, you good? I'm like, I'm great. He said, your income has decreased significantly. What happened? Because you're spending money like you got it. You ain't got that much money like you used to. And I said, oh my gosh. It hit me when he called me. I'm like, wait a minute. I did leave a big paycheck behind. And I'm spending money as if I got that big paycheck still. So I'm sacrificing once again, like a financial sacrifice for a dream that no one sees but me. And I'm like, it's okay. I got to stay focused. I'm going to stay focused. God has me. And then, long story short, decided to do a show called Love and Marriage Huntsville that became a franchise. Huntsville, DC, and Detroit. And that's what faith is about. To leave one franchise behind and then to create your own. That is nothing but God's blessing, God's grace, and God's faithfulness. And I wanted to share that message as my first episode because it's so significant to know that God could dream a bigger dream for you than you could ever possibly dream for yourself. And I knew in that moment that anytime I go through a period of life where I have to sacrifice something, I know that the reward will be bigger. And although it may seem scary at the time and confusing, God makes no mistakes. He makes no mistakes. So as we're celebrating Easter Sunday today, and as we are figuring out life in this very scary time, I hope my story really inspired you all to know that it's okay to step out on faith. It's okay to dream big. It's okay to go big or go home. Because at the end of the day, when God puts something in your heart, if you devote your life to Him, He alone will see it to fruition.